Imagine, 4 million years ago, before cities, before language, before humans even knew how to say their own names, there lived two souls separated, but destined to meet. They didn't know what love was. They didn't know how to speak, let alone make promises. But in that long, wild silence, they felt something deeper than any words we have today. This is a story about first love. A love that happened before love itself even had a name. If you enjoy stories like this, unusual love in a time we never knew, don't forget to leave your comments below. How do you feel after hearing this story? 4 million years ago, the world was still strange and savage. There were no cities. There were no human voices. Only dense forests, a sky the color of stone, and the distant roars of ancient giants. The leaves were wet with dew. The ground trembled every time a large herd passed, and rivers flowed without knowing where they ended. In a rocky valley surrounded by giant trees lived a young man from the northern herd. He was taller than average, his skin dark as burnt tree trunks, and his eyes sharp, lurking with danger. He had no name. No one else had one. They simply lived, survived, and died. But he was different. He often stared up at the sky, observing the shapes of clouds, the movements of birds, and the shadows of the night. Inside his chest something was growing. He didn't know what it was, only he felt empty, as if he were searching for something, but he didn't know what. Far from where he lived, on the other side of the mountains, lived a young woman from the southern herd. She was slender and agile, with long hair that was always braided roughly. She was known as a top gatherer. His hands were agile, his eyes alert, and he wasn't afraid to explore alone. Despite his elders' forbidding, he often strayed from the pack. He loved the silence. He loved to touch the cool river water and follow the tracks of small animals left in the mud. Within him, too, there was an inexplicable feeling. Longing, perhaps, but for whom? One day the wind changed direction. The pack from the north moved, seeking greener pastures. So did the pack from the south, forced to move because the dry season had dried up their food sources. Unbeknownst to them, their footsteps began to draw closer. Nature, previously indifferent, seemed to be plotting something. Little did they know they were about to meet. A small incident that would change history, even before it was written. And in a world without names, without language, without love as we know it, two souls would find each other. But before that could happen, they would have to survive their first dark night. A night that would separate them from their respective packs. A cloudy sky hung heavy over the ancient forest. Leaves were falling faster than usual. The wind carried a scent of danger that even the animals could sense. The northern herd moved faster than usual. They crossed a valley they had never explored before, for their leader sensed something strange in the land. But the young man, who always walked at the back, was left behind. He was watching a small, limping deer. Not to hunt it, but out of an uncontrollable curiosity. He followed the small footprints over rocks and ducked beneath thorny branches. Within seconds, his herd's footsteps had disappeared behind the cliff. On the other side, the female gatherer was also walking alone. She found a rare fruit tree towering on the west side of the river. She jumped from rock to rock, uprooting roots, collecting some leaves, and then heard strange sounds coming from the north. She stopped. Silence. The sounds weren't from animals, nor from her own herd. Evening came early that day. A thin mist began to rise from the valley floor. The air grew cold and heavy. The woman walked slowly, realizing she no longer knew the way home. The young man from the north, who had been stalking the deer, was now silent among the bushes. He heard no herd sounds, no calls, no footsteps. He was alone. Darkness descended like a flood. The forest mercilessly swallowed the light. The two of them, the man and the woman, walked slowly on opposite sides of the forest, unaware that one more step would lead them to the same place. But no one walks straight in the ancient forest. Every tree seemed to twist. Every sound led them astray. That first night became a night of no safety. The sounds from the darkness turned into roars. Flashes of lightning made the shadows of the trees look like ancient giants. The young man made a fire from stones and twigs. He had never done it alone before. But that night he had to survive. A small flame danced in his eyes. He hugged his knees, cold, hungry, and alone. The woman also sat under a large tree. She wrapped herself in broad leaves and tried to ward off fear. In the distance, she saw a small light flickering among the bushes. Fire. But who had made it? Rose. His steps were hesitant, but he continued forward. Among the hundreds of trees and shadows, for the first time, two pairs of eyes would meet. But not that night. Dawn hadn't yet arrived, but the glow of embers lingered through the morning mist. The air was so still that even the sound of dew falling to the ground felt like a whisper. The young man woke early. He sat hugging his knees, staring into the distance behind the bushes, as if waiting for something he'd never seen before. Soft footsteps sounded, low, almost silent, but the young man heard them. He stood, straight, alert. His right hand gripped a sharp stone, ready to face whatever creature might come from behind the mist. Then the figure appeared. A young woman. Her hair was damp with dew, her skin scarred, but her eyes stared at him as he had seen them before in his dreams. They stared at each other, silently, without a word. No sign. Only a heart beating faster than usual. The young man slowly lowered the stone. He didn't know why. He just felt, for the first time, he didn't want to protect himself, but to protect what was in front of him. The woman didn't retreat. Nor did she step forward. She simply stood there, letting the distance remain, but also letting time freeze between them. A bird flew overhead, breaking the silence. Leaves fell one by one. Then the young man took a piece of fruit he had been saving since the night before. Gently, he placed it on the rock in front of him, then took a step back. The woman stared at the fruit. Her hand reached out, hesitant, then took it. She smelled its aroma, then looked back at the young man. And for the first time she smiled. A small, faint smile, but enough to make his chest feel strange. Warm, tight, and somehow full. In a world that didn't yet know language, they spoke. Not with voices but with eyes. Not with words but with presence. Two beings who didn't even know the meaning of love had felt it, in its purest and most ancient form. That day they said nothing. They sat together by the slowly dying fire. The sun finally rose, shining on two souls who had unknowingly found each other. And this is where it all began.